Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.
Hey, and welcome to the Wager Zone, the first weekend in the books where we had the full slate.
Yeah.
Soccer, NFL, college football.
Trifecta.
It was a trying week. Let me tell you, I was up a lot of hours watching a lot of football. It didn't help that the Colorado State game went until 2 in the morning, and then basically all the NFL the next day. I was very, very sleepy by Monday. But I'd say, once again, I thought college football...
It was still a lean slate.
It hasn't grasped me yet to the point of where I'm like, this is a good college football season. And I think that some of that has to do with we haven't had great matchups. And some of the teams I think everybody thought would be really good are sort of mediocre, and the teams that are really good, or at least we think are really good, have played just cupcakes over and over. But let's get into college football in week 3, and we'll talk about one of those big boys who we think is really good. The first, do we want to call it a test? At least team with some talent on it, so they have to play. Georgia, South Carolina. I think this sort of went pretty much how both of us thought. South Carolina got off to a hot start.
Gave him a big fight.
And then by the second half, Georgia's defense decided it no longer wanted to mess around and shut down South Carolina pretty good. Offense is still, I think, a work in progress, but I thought it looked pretty good. But in that second half, I mean, it was basically split 2 halves. Georgia was mediocre that first half. Second half, they looked like a contending football team. What did you make of that Georgia-South Carolina game?
Yeah. South Carolina jumped on them early. I think Georgia's susceptible. Their defense isn't as dominant as it was last year, I don't think. They lost a lot of good players. Heck, that lineman that went to Philly might be the best lineman in the NFL already.
Micah might. Well, I don't know what you consider Micah Parsons, but a defensive menace would probably be the word.
Losing Carter was huge. He's just been immediate impact in the NFL. So their defense isn't quite as dominant, and they still, they had their issues offensively last year, but their defense was so dominant they could overcome it. And it's a little bit about the same kind of offense this year, newer quarterback. So I think that's the step down we're seeing offensively. But I don't know if they're going to be able to go on a run like they have the last couple of years. They look beatable.
Yeah.
And South Carolina is not, a powerhouse. They're mid-range
Question
SEC.
to you, we'll get to some of the other SEC games. But, I think we have to admit it's probably a down year for the SEC.
Yeah.
I have not seen any of the teams look exactly like they've probably looked for, go on 15 to 20 years. We won't talk about Alabama, but they're clearly offensive line issues. We'll get to Tennessee and Florida here in a little bit, but neither of those teams, I'd say, look as Florida doesn't look like a elite team, and Tennessee does not look as dominant as they were last year. You saw Arkansas lose to BYU. LSU, struggled with Florida State. Looked great again. We'll talk about that game in a little bit. So with what you've seen from the SEC, do you still think there might be a Georgia loss in there? Because now I'm a little worried that there just isn't enough talent in the SEC to sort of knock them off their post.
When you look at their schedule, they've got a very favorable schedule. I think their toughest one on the schedule is going at Tennessee in November. So I think they might be able to run the regular season slate. It'll be an SEC championship game type of thing. I don't know. If they just get matched up against somebody that's hot offensively, and South Carolina did that on them for a half. Now Georgia figured it out and made the adjustments they needed and put them away. But if there was a team that they couldn't figure it out against, that maybe they drop one. But I'm just not seeing it. I mean, like you said, we've said Georgia's down a little bit, but so is everybody else in the SEC.
It's just one of those off years in the SEC.
Yeah, maybe college football.
Maybe college football, honestly. And we'll flip to one of the teams I think is actually probably you could talk me into being the best in college football, at least right now in Washington. You say a test, but I mean, there's a lot going on at Michigan State right now. Plus, I don't think either of us think Michigan State is all that great of shakes beforehand. But you have to be impressed with what Washington's done. I mean, Boise State, Michigan State are teams with at least comparable Division I level talent with some NFL talent sprinkled in there. And that offense just looks ridiculous. I think the first question I'd ask is, I think we both thought Michael Penix was a good quarterback.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you watch him right now. He's not Caleb Williams, but he's just an elite quarterback right now, hitting just crazy passes. Yeah,
and the play calling benefits that. I mean, they are not afraid to sling it every play, just down the field. I'm interested to see when they run up against these other Pac-12 solid teams, but even then, that'll be more of a shootout than a defensive battle. So I think, I like Washington.
That would be the thing. What do you think of Washington's defense? It's looked better, but, Boise State's offense has been a struggle all year long. Michigan State's offense, is no great shakes either. So I don't think we quite know, if that Washington team defensively can bring it versus the elites, but offensively, I think they're going to put up 35, 40 points versus basically anybody. Last question on Washington here. Do you think DeBoer will stick around? Because I think there's going to be some SEC shakeup here, coaching-wise, in a couple places, just because it hasn't been good. Does he make that move, or I think Washington is a good job to have and a big enough job to have. Does he make that move? Or
they're one of the ones going to the Big Ten, correct?
Yes, they're the Big Ten ones.
Okay. I mean, I don't see any reason to bolt then.
Yeah, that's what I don't see any reason. But
I mean,
with the job he did at Fresno, and now you're seeing the job he's doing at Washington.
And Washington's got boosters. I mean, they can pay him. Yeah,
I think he's probably comfortable there. Chris Peterson stuck there till he, burned out a little bit. But I'm impressed with what DeBoer did. We've both been big fans of his all the way back at his Fresno State days, and what he's doing offensively, that offensive coordinator deserves a lot of credit too. I think he'll probably get a coaching job here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, especially if Penix stays on this pace, he's going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate for sure.
Definitely so. All right, let's go to the Tennessee-Florida games. I think everybody that we talked to could sort of see the writing on the wall.
We both saw it kind of coming.
We didn't quite know what level Florida is, but Florida did what the Florida Billy Napier just likes to do. Dominated defensive line, dominated offensive line. That's how they win football games. It's not the most beautiful thing to watch, but this was Billy Napier game in a whole in this one.
Well, the first half, they dominated ball control, just completely took it out of Tennessee's offense. Their offense had 22 snaps the entire first half. And then, like you said, dominated both sides of the line. They were able to run the ball really well and just not make mistakes. And they controlled it from there. Pretty much built up enough in the first half to keep it out of reach.
Yep. Tennessee, is this a sign of more things to come down the road? Or does it get better? It's hard for me to quite tell, because there's definitely something missing from the offense this year that last year they just had.
Well, I think one thing you've got to look at is just the deficiencies on the offensive line. Tennessee lost 2 guys to the NFL draft off the offensive line. Their starting center's been out all year, hasn't played a game yet. And And, they also got 2 wide receivers drafted into the NFL draft. So replacing a lot of pieces on the offense. And of course, Hooker going and bringing in Milton. Although I don't think Milton was the reason why they lost this game. He had one crazy chucked interception from where the offensive line completely broke down. But we saw a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of your future outlook on Tennessee kind of depends on where you were at the beginning of the year. We were both a little bit more reserved. We thought 8-9 wins is probably the window. A lot of mainstream media and of course the local guys here were 10-2 is the bottom line, and I thought repeating what happened last year with this team was pretty much a long shot to begin with. So if you were going to hit that 10-2 mark, that Florida game was a must-win. I don't think you're going to get there. I still think 8 or 9 is the realistic picture. They've got a couple of opportunities to get right. They've got UTSA this weekend. They get to host South Carolina at home in Neyland, and then they get a bye week. So they've got a little bit of time to figure some things out. They really need to figure it out on the offensive side of the ball. It just doesn't seem like last season, a lot of guys were getting drawn open, and Milton just had to just basically toss the ball their direction and they would be open. And we're just not seeing guys running that open. Maybe it's defenses have had another year to study Heupel's offense. They also lost Golish to South Florida, so maybe new play caller, but I still think Heupel's the main play caller. But I was disappointed. I hoped Tennessee could win this one, but I was kind of cautiously pessimistic going in. I kind of saw, especially in my past 20 years history of watching the Vols going into Gainesville, it's never a good situation, no matter how good each team is.
Yeah. Be interesting to sort of see if this offense, it'll be interesting to see which one, but we won't talk Alabama, but which offensive line fixes itself first, because I don't know which one's playing worse right now. I guess Tennessee probably has the better, at least, quarterback situation.
I think if they can get their center back, it would fix a lot of things.
Both teams' offensive line issues, I think, are leading to disappointing play.
Well, they also had their guy that's been working right tackle all year did not play Saturday, and it comes out that he had a minor citation for possession on the Thursday prior to the trip. So I think that was a punishment situation. They let him play special teams, which was odd, but he didn't play offensive line at all in that game. So that was really 2 pieces missing off the offensive line.
All right, flip to another SEC game. LSU Miss State. I
was surprised by this one.
Well, it's just one of those things. We got the Jaden Daniels that looks like the best quarterback in college football. It's you never know where the roulette wheel is going to drop on his play, and you got the drop where he ran the ball, he passed the ball like just an elite college quarterback, and they went him there and beat up Miss State pretty good. Does this sort of spin off into LSU sort of taking off now, or is it always sort of be conducive on how Daniels plays?
I think this potentially could spin off into them being the top runners for the West. Alabama's got their issues, and it's something of a monkey off your back to get that one loss out of the way. It was fortunate it was a non-conference loss, so they've already taken some learning opportunities from that one and hopefully fix some things. But they look just dominant against Mississippi State on the road.
Yeah. It was just a walk away. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, this is why people like Jaden Daniels. Now, next week.
Now, I will say they have probably one of the worst in-game coaches in college football in Brian Kelly. He makes just terrible decisions left and right. He can put great teams together, but tends to find ways to lose games sometimes. So a little worried about that. Yeah. But LSU's offense looked unstoppable.
Yeah, it was something to watch last week. Last one, not a huge matchup, but I just put this in here because I've sort of been paying attention to him throughout the season because I bet against him the open week, and then I've been riding him pretty hard in my bets. And Liberty looks like a legit football team right now. Their offense looks just ridiculous. The coaching staff has gone in there and gotten that thing flowing a little quicker than I thought they could. And I think this is a legit team right now. It's sort of everything I think they wanted to be under Hugh Freeze, but what they are right now, I was impressed they went into Buffalo and scored like 55 points.
Yeah, I didn't have any doubt that Jamie Chadwell was going to be able to go into Liberty and build a good team. I just did not think it would be this fast. I don't know if enough guys stayed over from Hugh Freeze's recruiting days, but he's got this thing rolling, and maybe have a team built just as good as his Coastal team in 1 year.
Yeah,
and you can definitely see the decline in Coastal with him gone as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll flip some Week 4 previews Thursday. I think there's an interesting game here in Georgia State, who started out 3-0.
Yep.
Coastal Carolina, who lost that opening game, but I think have looked better the last 2 weeks. 6.5 points. I still think Coastal gets a little bit of a favorable line here, but I'm curious your thoughts looking at this. Is Coastal going to sort of take off here? Because I think they're starting to hit their stride offensively. I don't know defensively. That'll be the question, because they played 2 teams in a row that aren't great offensively. Can this Georgia State team come in here, put points on them, force them out of what they want to do, or do you think Coastal Carolina is sort of ready to take off here and make that run in the Sun Belt as sort of this kicks off the Sun Belt season?
I mean, it's a good opportunity. I think Georgia State's been playing pretty good defense as well, and not much of a scary situation for Coastal to go into here. So it is a midweek game, so it'll be interesting to see what the crowd's like. I don't think it's going to be much of a factor. But Georgia State's looked well. They've been impressive. So this is a good opportunity for Coastal to convince themselves that they, get over that Week 1 loss and just be like, all right, let's get back to what we are.
Yeah. Once again, I can't say enough about the Sun Belt teams. There are a lot of really, really good, Sun Belt teams playing good football right now. If you're watching sort of a lower tier conference play football, I'd watch a lot of Sun Belt football. It's good football overall with a lot of really, really good teams. Friday, we have Wisconsin and Purdue. This is interesting to me because, once again, Wisconsin, I thought looked like garbage versus Georgia Southern. They needed 6 interceptions to sort of even remotely win that game. And even then, in the first half, it was 14-14 when they got 3 interceptions. And Purdue, good win the week before versus Virginia Tech, played Syracuse at home last week.
Virginia Tech might be one of the worst D1 football teams in the country. Them and Virginia probably give a run for each other's money.
I think so. It might be that James Madison's the best team in Virginia right now. But I actually watched Purdue, mostly because I've had bets on them one way or the other every week. They aren't awful, but they aren't great. And I don't think this Wisconsin team here, 6, Wisconsin midweek late night game in Purdue, does Wisconsin go in there and sort of dominate? Because I'm looking for a second team out of that other side of the Big Ten bracket. I think we're getting close to scratching off Illinois here. I have not liked anything I've seen from Wisconsin, or is just going to be all these other teams are going to be awful.
Maybe Nebraska can turn it around.
Yeah. Basically, it's Iowa, and then a huge drop-off here.
And they've already got the win over Iowa State.
Yeah. Is there any of these teams you think can move up a level? Because Purdue's the one I have my eye on that maybe they can sort of put something together here, but I'm not sold totally on anybody else out of that side of the Big Ten.
I don't know. I don't hate Wisconsin in this matchup. I know they looked terrible, but here's my thing. How much, over the last 2 weeks, do you think they were preparing for Georgia Southern?
I don't know, but they might have prepared.
I'm just saying, maybe they've been looking ahead to this Purdue matchup. They know that division's vulnerable. Wisconsin's, historically a really good football team. I don't know. I actually kind of lean Wisconsin here.
Yeah, probably.
I don't like Purdue as much as you, I guess.
I don't know if I like them. I'm searching for somebody to take out of that division that isn't Iowa, and I don't know if I can find it. I think you're probably just better off putting your whole bankload on Iowa to win that division because nobody has really impressed me other than Iowa. I think Iowa's, I don't want to say good, but defensively they're solid, and offensively they seem to be back into their Iowa mode where they can
I think
kind of
they like, hey, we get 21 points. We hold the other team to less than 21
That's
points.
sort of what it is. It's like our goal, 21. Any way we can get there, then we're fine. But I'm searching for somebody in that division. The only one who's looked like they have some players, I thought, was Purdue. I haven't been impressed with Wisconsin. I don't know if they can put it together, though, Purdue. So I'm searching still. The one who probably should win that side or petition to go to that side, Rutgers. 3-0 now, my boys. And I guess you could say this is sort of Michigan's first test. At least someone with a half pulse. 24 points here versus Michigan. Do they continue to cruise? No Harbaugh again in this one. Rutgers even got to 30 points 2 weeks in a row. Can Rutgers give up any sort of problem here? Rutgers is going to beat the bad teams, lose to the good teams.
I don't think they stand any chance in this one. I just think Michigan's defense is too dominant. They're just going to out-physical this Rutgers team. Now, I don't know how many points Michigan's going to score. I think this is going to be a kind of an ugly game, but I do think Michigan – I don't know if they cover the 24. I think they definitely win by more than 2 touchdowns, so somewhere in that 14 to 21 range.
Yeah, I think we'll sort of see also how real Rutgers.
But I also think Rutgers is going to go in to the game with the strategy. Let's slow this thing down as much as possible. Let's make it a trenches game. Now, that's kind of what Michigan likes, so that's going to be a struggle for them.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm just interested. We got a 3-0 Rutgers now, and we just haven't seen Michigan play anybody. And we haven't really been able to talk Michigan football. Maybe next week we can at least bring them up.
We're not too far away from some Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan matchups, hopefully.
Yes. I'm interested just to see how – I think this is more a barometer of where Rutgers sort of is program-wise. Yeah. If they can at least fight enough in the trenches to hang around. More than,
Well, and they can still have a very good year for Rutgers and lose this game.
That's what
they're on pace to get 7 or 8 at this
that's
point.
What I think that's
which is tremendous for Rutgers.
I think when we talked about in our preview show, I was like, I think they can get to 6.
Their over-under was, what, 4.5?
Yeah.
And I think you took that over.
Yes. And I'm now like, they might be able to get to 7 or 8 if this team's legit.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to see how legit they sort of are here in this
Well,
Rutgers,
it's one thing I've noticed, especially the last few years, really following college football, is the lower tier teams, you can really tell the coaching advantages and disadvantages where a good coach at a lower tier team is going to find ways to win games, where a bad coached lower tier team is going to find ways to lose those games. And I as much as I didn't want Sciotto at Tennessee, he's still a pretty good football coach.
You don't have to like him, which not many people do, but he wins football games. So, at Rutgers.
Yeah. If you can, both stints he's been at Rutgers, if he can get them, bowl teams, that's awesome.
That's what he did before. We'll see if he can sort of redo it again. The Champions League game is on. We're being distracted by Real Madrid and Union Berlin. A couple post shots here. So
I was wondering what was going on. I was like, is he having a seizure or something over here next to me? No, he's
no seizure. Just my ADHD brain is multitasking on about 4 different things at once. Anyway, let's move to. This is probably. To a second biggest game, maybe biggest game, depending on if you're in the Midwest or if you're in the South. But Florida State goes to Clemson. Florida State, interesting game over the weekend.
I think it was an overlooked game.
Yeah. Boston College, always difficult to go to, especially in that early time slot. And actually, I've watched Boston College a couple times now. Their offense is kind of freakishly good. Their quarterback's really, really good. So I don't sort of mark that as, oh, that's a terrible sort of game. Let's downgrade Florida State. Travis didn't look as good as he's looked. They go to Clemson, who, after being awful in that Duke game, I don't want to say looked better, but they've at least put some points on the board. We go to a real game here in Death Valley. Clemson getting 2 points. It's probably been a long while since they've been underdogs in Death Valley. You seem to lean heavy Florida State. Yeah. I told you I'm already nervous.
My picks aren't finalized,
I'm taking my my head is always already leaning to taking Clemson at home in Death Valley. What do you make of this game? Because I'm actually kind of intrigued by it to see maybe just a blip by Clemson, or is Florida State going to go in there, roll through there, and really the Florida State-Miami game probably think it's ACC showdown.
I think it's going to be a tale of which side, comes out as the better side of the ball. Clemson with the better defense, Florida State with the obviously better offense. Whoever can dictate how the game goes is going to win this game. Yeah. I lean Florida State. I think getting anything under a touchdown here is good value. They will definitely be on my picks in a couple days.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk myself out of it because I think I'm the one that started the Clemson isn't very good bandwagon.
I did take a road favorite and put 10 units on it last week, and it did not go my way. So another road favorite.
Did not. It did take a 61-yard field goal to
SEC record.
to sort of
all right, hey,
put it away.
Football.
Yes, football. Football indeed. Real Madrid. It's living in Union Berlin's box right now. So,
but they haven't scored.
They haven't scored, so we'll see. All right, let's move on from Florida State. Clemson. Let's call it the last gasp for Texas A&M here. I was pretty stunned this line was 7.5. I know Auburn might not be very good at football, but
you know what? I'm going to be honest with you here.
Texas A&M good at football?
I haven't watched a lick of Auburn this year.
I watched a little of the.
I haven't watched.
Was it Arizona? Which one did they? They played a West Coast team.
They went to Cal.
I watched a little of that one.
I didn't watch any of that one. And
they weren't very good, but Cal wasn't very good either. So I don't know what to make of that. I watched A&M play Miami. They weren't very good. The number seems a little high to me, but I don't really know what Auburn is, and I think A&M's just sitting there ready to be sort of bullied a little bit and then quit.
Well,
but maybe they find a rhythm here.
I tell you what, we talk about that huge contract Jimbo has, but the players are not on board there. I mean, you've seen it. We saw it at the sidelines of that Miami game. Those players were very unhappy. I know a couple people that live in Texas that are big A&M fans, and there's a lot of rumors going around about gathering money already, and this would be one they can't afford to drop. But I don't know, 7.5 seems like an awful lot.
It just seemed like a big spread. I'm like, what has A&M done to prove they can win?
I think this is more of is Auburn even a real team? It's not A&M is this good.
And that's where it's sort of like, but what do I think of Auburn?
Yeah.
I'm like, they might be awful. So it was just an interesting one that stuck out as soon as
this is an opportunity for Hugh Freeze to start getting his name back out there. And he's proven with previous stints in the SEC, he'd like to go in and upset some guys. I just don't know if it's going to happen year one at Auburn.
Yeah, he wins this game and then loses the next week to some clown show of a team. So that would be the Hugh Freeze maneuver. Let's go to a team that's semi-recovered here. TCU, really good win, I'd say, versus Houston. The Houston take when they're down or take with the opposite when they're up did not work in this one. TCU pretty much dominated.
I'm definitely done with the Cougs.
My question here is, how much do you buy this defense? Because I think that's your sort of handicapping of this game. They looked much more organized in that Houston game, but I mean, I think both of us think Houston is kind of a joke.
We both thought that.
Yeah, Yuki San Antonio win was a big sort of win, and it turns out that's not a big win.
Well, we were both really down on Houston going into the year, and they've overachieved, and I guess they kind of came back to what we thought they were. So I like SMU in this matchup, getting the points. I don't quite buy TCU's recovery, and I think they just played a worse Houston team. But I think TCU still at best is a 7-8 win team this year.
I think that's their top end. I think it could be more like in the 6s.
Yeah.
I was leaning a little.
SMU, I think, is one of the best teams in their conference.
Yeah, I think SMU, there's a little juice here to take it. If you could find it at 7 somewhere, I'd be all over that.
I'd probably sprinkle a little on the money line as well.
I think that's coming. Don't give away.
I honestly, I think that spread's already
Don't give away the possible underdog of the week on the shorts here. Too early. Anyway, let's go to Colorado, Oregon. I honestly, I was hoping this number would be lower just because everybody's in the let's bet Colorado stage.
I'm sure it'll move.
I think the Travis Hunter injury sort of couldn't boldly go down there because a bunch of like sharps were gonna hammer it if they went under 20. I'm not a sharp.
Is this in Eugene?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not a sharp, but I was hoping it'd open under 20 because I was gonna put something on it, but it's 21, which now it makes me a little nervous, especially for a backdoor.
I think if you're looking to build some teasers, this might be a good one. I don't know if Colorado can keep up.
No.
I mean, we saw, Colorado State's not amazing, and that was a bloodbath last week. I know it's an in-state rival and stuff, but, I think they're in the big boy leagues now, and I just don't know if he's going to have what it takes. But we'll see. It really depends on what Oregon's defense can do, I think.
Yes.
I think Oregon's going to have no problem scoring. It's just a matter of if they can keep it from being a shootout and stop Colorado's offense.
I think the thing that worried me was, like, Oregon gets out, it's 35-14 type thing, fourth quarter. I am assuming Colorado gets a couple cheapy, back-end scores here, and that 21 just seemed a little too high. They certainly made it where they want to take on Colorado bets and not Oregon bets, because that 21 number it reeks of very high.
Well, I mean,
being back
all right.
here.
So how do you justify having Colorado a top 20 team in the country, but they're a 21-point dog against Oregon? I think one of those is not right.
Yeah.
I think the ranking is the one that's not right. That 21 is probably around what it's going to be, but it's too much to take Oregon.
Well, I had my rankings rent in week 1. We probably won't be due for that for another week or two.
But if you want to go through, like I said, get Oregon, take a couple other 2, 3, 4 teams and that are all heavy favorites. There's actually, I was looking. There's 6 to 8 top 25 matchups this week, but there's also like a ton of big time favorites this week. So a lot of teaser potential there. But again, backdoor is still kind of scary.
Yes. Let's go to what I think actually might be the Pac-12 game of the week here. UCLA, Utah. Utah 4.5-point favorites. We're going to get Rising, I believe, here. UCLA has sort of quietly been, I think, pretty good playing football right now. And I don't know if I'd say they're Pac-12 contenders, but I certainly have my eye on them. I like the way they've looked.
Yeah.
And they're sort of sneakily snaking their way through the season. I think they can go in here and give Utah problems, especially with the way Utah's offense has not looked. I don't, they keep, once we get Rising back, but I'm like, how good is he going to be, just coming off an ACL injury 8 months after that? I don't know if it's going to be the same sort of Cam Rising that we saw towards the end of last season. So I think this is a sneaky spot here for UCLA, but it looks a little baked into the line, too, with Utah minus 4.5.
Yeah, one thing in the back of my mind that kind of sits with me is UCLA kind of does this where they get you believing, they get you bought in, and then when, the big game comes, they crap the bed.
Yeah, we're talking 10 points in this one or something.
So I'm afraid of the crap the bed situation here, but Utah hasn't really impressed me a lot. I mean, they won that game versus Florida in the first week, but Florida did basically everything wrong in that game. They had turnovers, and they still were only like a touchdown and a half down at the end of that game. I don't know. It's going to be tough, but I probably got to lean UCLA. But like I said, I'm afraid of. They're one of those teams that when they convince me to take them, they let me down.
Yeah, I'm interested in it, and Utah, like you said, they haven't been impressive, but you also can't totally complain. They've managed to find their way to win games without their starting quarterback, and their defense has been pretty solid all year long. So it's just I'm curious about this game. Like I'll have my eyes more on this game than I will versus like Oregon, Colorado. Another game we'll have our eyes on, Ole Miss versus Alabama. This is, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I am not worried, all that much about Alabama, but this is the first time I'm starting to get a little worried because the offensive line play now has been atrocious for 3 weeks in a row. It was absolutely abysmal last week in that South Florida game. I will say the defense was not atrocious in that South Florida game, but there's definitely some concerns. I think we knew the quarterback issues. They sort of can't find one. And the receiver issues where, they've managed to circle through 24 different NFL receivers. They probably don't have one of those on their roster right now. But what do you make of this Ole Miss-Alabama game? I don't know quite what to make of Ole Miss. You got that Tulane game, which, on paper looks like a big win. But once again,
Tulane out their best player.
Yeah, it was a tied game, one-score game throughout, and they didn't even have their quarterback. So I'm curious what you make of this.
I'm interested to see what kind of game plan Kiffin brings for Ole Miss here because they may just want to say, hey, let's go out and score and see if Bama can keep pace and not even try to really slow down the game and just see if Bama's trio of quarterbacks. I think Milroe's going again in this one.
I think we're
I think Saban just threw those other two guys out last week to kind of prove that, hey, I did make the right choice with Milroe, and now we're going back to him.
Well, I think he also just he knew that South Florida game.
Yeah.
He'd find a way to win. He wanted to see if either of these guys were sort of worthy of
They're not.
They are not. The Simpson kid at least looked a little bit like he could do something, but, none of them are elite, and the only one who might have a chance of maybe working his way that way, I think, is Milroe, but
I haven't looked at it yet, but if this total is under 60, I'm definitely taking the over. I haven't liked really what I've seen from Bama on either side of the ball, and I know Ole Miss is going to find a way to put some points on the board. It's just going to be a matter of if Bama can score points or not.
Yeah, definitely so. We'll see what they do. We'll see if they can fix their offensive line issues. It's looked unlike a Nick Saban team since Kent State in 1988
well,
or something.
It's the first time Bama's been outside the top 10 in 8 years.
Yeah, that should sum pretty much everything up. This one, fun Big 12 matchup here. BYU goes into Arkansas, big win. Kansas continues to win games. This was a number I was very, very shocked at. Kansas, 8.5-point favorites at home.
I'm shocked to see BYU getting that many points after going and winning in Arkansas.
That's what I don't know.
Arkansas is not an easy place to go in and win.
I feel like sometimes the odds makers overrate sort of BYU going on the road. I've always thought BYU is a pretty good road team just because they're used to traveling. They had those years when they were playing independence that they go all over the place. I think they handle it pretty well. You don't really have to worry about a lot of problems, with BYU out partying late at night. So I just always think BYU is a pretty solid take when they're on the road. And it shocked me that they're given this much sort of praise to Kansas here when Kansas is, I'd say, real true first test. You can say Illinois, but I think we've both seen Illinois enough now to sort of cross that off as a test. Let's go to Arkansas, LSU. Arkansas coming off that loss to BYU. LSU coming onto it. 17.5 point spread. Does Arkansas continue to sort of downward spiral? Their defense just, once again, does not look capable of getting key stops.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about Daniel's polarity when we talked about last week, and if he comes out as accurate as he was in this last game, didn't make any mistakes, it's going to be hard to beat LSU. And if Arkansas can't figure out their defense, 17.5 might not be much of a spread. They might have this in the second quarter.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm
not saying I'm going to be all over LSU minus 17.5. I'm not a big fan of 2+ touchdown favorites pretty much anywhere. But
no, once you start crossing over 10 in conference games, I've been to hold
and it's college football too. I mean, it's anything can happen.
Yeah,
but
I am a little worried here with Arkansas. I wonder if they can be. Yeah, now you're getting into.
Hey, my team about got to go there. I'm open for the upset.
Union Berlin could get in here. I'm a little worried this Arkansas team, it was sort of such a good story 3 or 4 years ago when the coach came in here and sort of took over, but it's sort of progressively gotten worse each and every year, and I wonder if this is sort of the fall-off year, even with their offensive sort of capabilities. I just wonder if this is like one of those like
Jefferson in like year 7.
Yeah. One of those really, really sort of like 4-win Arkansas type teams.
Well, and the thing that kind of puts the magnifying glass on it is the West is what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Teams, Bama's down. Mississippi State doesn't look that great. A&M, I mean, they may prove to be terrible again. So there's opportunities, and they haven't really capitalized on those opportunities. And this year might have the biggest ones, and that letdown against BYU may just collapse their season.
Yeah, I got my eye on it. And then the other big game of the week, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Notre Dame opens as a 3-point dog here at home. I'm curious what you make of Ohio State. A semi-test versus Western Kentucky. Close game, and then they rolled off about like 4 or 5 straight touchdowns. Everybody's still hyping the defense. I will say holding Western Kentucky to 14 points, pretty impressive. But I think this Notre Dame will be a sort of test to them. What do you make of this Notre Dame-Ohio State?
Well, I'm a little nervous because Ohio State, week 1, their offense had struggles, but they've looked to kind of get back in rhythm. And I'm worried. Notre Dame's looked good offensively. They've scored, 40, 40, and 50 in their 3 games this year, including one tough one on the road at NC State. But I don't know if their defense can stop this Ohio State attack here. I think if it becomes a shootout, Ohio State has the advantage. And Notre Dame's got a really good running game, probably the best offensive line in college football. If they can slow it down, I don't think Notre Dame's going to want this thing to be a high-flying offensive game because that's going to play into Ohio State's strengths.
I think, though, that's where they can beat them up a little bit here is I think Ohio State has struggled against those teams that have sort of dominated along the line here. So I think Notre Dame can win this game. I've been really impressed with Notre Dame so far this year. I think they're one of the contenders to get into the playoffs. So this is sort of the game to make it where they can get into the playoffs. And I'm not quite ready to say I'm going to go big on Notre Dame, but I'm certainly, the brain is sort of leaning that way, trusting my eyes and what I've seen from Notre Dame.
This may be one I just kind of sit back and see what happens. I don't know if I want to go too aggressive. I lean Notre Dame. I want them. I think that's kind of my heart wants them to beat Ohio State, but I may just watch this one and take some of my other dogs that I like, and UCLA and maybe a little bit on Ole Miss.
Yeah. All right. That does it for college football. Let's spin things towards the NFL. All right, let's make our way to some NFL. Interesting week. I think some questions need to be asked of a handful of teams here. I know it's early and everybody tends to sort of overreact, on the NFL. It sort of needs to be mentioned their 15 games still left to be played. So, full declarations, I think are a little premature, but I think there are questions on a couple of these teams that it sort of need to be asked. Let's sort of look at a couple games here. One of those teams, I think we need to ask question, is this Ravens-Bengals game that was played. I know we both thought the Bengals would probably start off slow, especially with, the Joe Burrow injury, which he might have re-injured in that game. But I think we both can say this Bengals team it looks worse than I think even we thought. Even with us going, I think this Bengals team's going to start slow to the year, then they'll sort of climb as they sort of get healthy, get the rhythm. But I'm now a little nervous here that this is the team out of that division that maybe falls back because Burrow hasn't looked right, the offense hasn't looked right, and honestly, Lamar Jackson carved them up.
Yeah.
That whole game. He dominated that game, a game where the Ravens didn't have their top two corners. They didn't have their top two offensive linemen. They're using, Lord knows what at running back. And I'm now getting a little bit of concerned here for the Bengals. What do you make here of the Cincinnati Bengals?
Well, I mean, in a division as tight as that we talked about, probably the most competitive division in NFL, to lose opening week against the Browns, week 2 against the Ravens, those divisional games are going to be huge come the end of this year. And to not only lose those games, to not even really be competitive at all.
Yeah.
Just get dominated. I mean, the Browns struggled a little bit to score, but still found a way to win by more than 2 touchdowns. So just really surprising at the lack of offensive production when they got Mixon back. They got all these guys, I guess Burrow maybe not healthy. We'll see, but looks like he got paid and is just completely tuned out. They just don't look in sync at all.
No, it's becoming worrying. I'm not going to totally panic, but they've looked worse than I thought they were going to, and now there's only so much of a hole you can dig here in the AFC. I mean, legit, I think there are so many good teams. If you're going for one of those wild card spots, it's going to be difficult if you paint yourself into a 1-3, 1-4 type hole, and basically have to go 12-2 to finish out the year, stuff like that. So a little concerning. See if their offense can maybe get back on track a little bit this week. But once again, Joe Burrow might have re-injured himself. And if we're now marking him off, this offense even gets probably worse. And the defense definitely has dropped off from what it was from that Super Bowl team, 2-3 years ago. Ravens-wise, looking pretty solid, depending on, they haven't played the toughest competition, but Lamar looks good. I actually think passing game-wise, with this receiver combination of, Flowers, Beckham, Bateman, and company has looked pretty solid. Running back wise, it's sort of by committee, but if they can get a couple of their offensive linemen healthy, get those defensive backs and be, sort of in that 5-2 type range, I think the Ravens might make a little noise here. Yeah,
they're putting themselves in a good position to kind of get an early start and then kind of coast into the playoffs coming out if things were to start going badly. Especially big, like you said, to get wins now, even with the injuries. That's just kind of like candy sprinkles on top. It's just going to make it that much easier to get it out of this division. It still kind of remains to be seen what Pittsburgh really is. They have a great defense, but their offense really hasn't put it together yet. So, good for the Ravens so far. I think they lack some kind of explosiveness. Mm-hmm. They're putting drives together. They're moving down the field. I feel like they struggle to finish drives at times, and they're not getting the big explosive plays.
Well, I I've watched Zay Flowers 2 weeks in a row. I think he can become that.
Yeah.
Sort of explosive receiver. Uses Bateman and sort of Beckham in between with, of course, Mark Andrews. Of course, you got your Lamar Jackson just doing ridiculous runs. But I think I like what I've seen from Zay Flowers. And I can sort of see this Ravens offense molding into something. Now, it depends how healthy they sort of get. I think we probably won't talk about Pittsburgh because they play the Raiders this week. We will talk a little bit about the Browns, but maybe we overrated this division a little bit. A lot of it, might have to do with the Chubb injury, and as bad as Watson's been. But just to sort of cap off this division, Steelers wise, how worried about you are this offense? Week 1, granted, Niners. You aren't going to move the ball, but Pickett has looked awful. They can't run the ball.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson went on IR, so he's probably done.
Najee Harris has just been lousy.
Yeah. You're dependent a lot on George Pickens now, who, while looks like a $1 million receiver, hasn't quite produced like it. So nervous-wise of Steelers offense here. It's been Browns and Niners. Defensively, it's two of the top teams who can harass. But
I love the Steelers coach, and he's going to find a win games that they shouldn't.
Monday.
But you can't keep winning games all regular season with 2 defensive touchdowns and 0 red zone appearances. They had 1 long touchdown pass, but they
caught Pickens in a missed coverage on.
But they never got into the red zone and found a way to win. But I don't think you can navigate a 17-game schedule and still win consistently doing that. Pickett's got to figure out how to move the ball, or try to be better running the ball. But they've been terrible at that.
Yes. Both of them too, Warren and Najee. Have not been good.
Najee looks slow.
Yeah,
I don't know what's happened to him, but I have him in one of my fantasy leagues, and he has not looked great.
No, I don't think it will get better as miles get piled up on the season either, which is what's concerning. If you're already looking slow in week 2, by week 12, I don't think you're going to be looking faster. Let's go to a team that I sort of thought righted itself in the Seahawks. Now, granted, Lions defense might be the team to sort of right themselves, but I don't want to say, are you not concerned? But, Seahawks-wise, first half versus the Rams, they looked all right. Second half was when it just went to pits, but then, that whole Lions game, they looked pretty good. I'm willing to say Seahawks probably okay. Geno Smith looked back and just write that second half off as just something weird that sometimes happens in football. But I think you go Lions-wise. Are you concerned any here, or do you still think this team is, I say, in the, let's go top 6 of the NFC?
Maybe top 6. I thought their defense looked...
the Montgomery injury, I think worries me a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if
it didn't look like
Jahmyr Gibbs could step up.
It didn't look like one that Montgomery's going to be rushed right back.
Yeah, from what I hear, they're going to take 2 to 3 weeks at least and take their time with that. But definitely a chance for Gibbs to kind of step up and show what he's worth, because he hasn't had many opportunities because Montgomery's played so well.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed, because I had that game on the main, not one of the quad boxes, Gibbs struggles blocking. He got Goff killed a couple of times there, and when Goff gets killed, that's I think he rushed his process in that pick 6 that he threw behind the receiver. So I'm not nervous about the Lions, but stuff like that you're like, oh, Gibbs, great explosive type player, but then you're like, well, he can't pick up the blocking schemes and protect the quarterback, and that sort of sends just a funnel down on your offense to slow it up a bit.
I think bad week for the Lions, but still, should run away with that division, and should be.
Well, if Green Bay can never get one of their actual receivers back and just not randos.
My bigger takeaway from this is good on the Seahawks to bounce back and not completely fall off, because There was an opportunity here to start the season
Yes.
0-2, heck, I was already thinking about jumping ship on the
Yes.
Seahawks. We were both big on them, and 1 week we were like, oh gosh, the Seahawks are terrible again. But this was a good bounce back for them, and maybe they can get right.
Yeah, I think it's just that Geno Smith thing where, it was so poor early on in his career. He has that resurgence last year where he sort of looks like the college quarterback that he was at West Virginia. And then that first game, it was like, why do they only have 3 yards of offense in the second half? So it's just one of those weird things, but looks to be sort of back on track here, and we'll see how the Seahawks move. Who isn't back on track? The Chicago Bears. This was one of my straight bets. And I won't say I regretted it instantly because basically it stayed in that pocket of the window.
They looked okay for the first quarter.
The pocket of the window is that the quarterback can't do anything. And I think that's where we focus this. We could talk a little Tampa Bay Bucks, but I don't think that's... I mean, they've beaten the Vikings, who look atrocious, and the Bears, who look even more atrocious. There are a couple teams here where I'm going to ask the same question. At what point do you say, screw this season, let's go get us a quarterback in this draft? In a draft that has probably a whole lot of quarterbacks that have a chance to be NFL quarterbacks. Because I think you can call it now. Fields is not an NFL quarterback. He can't pass the ball. They don't even want to pass the ball with him.
I saw some film breakdown of his game this past weekend, and he was just completely not even looking at wide open receivers. They had a double post route, and he took the underneath guy that was double covered, and the guy over the top was completely wide open for a touchdown. I mean, just pitch and catch stuff that he's just doesn't have the field vision, and he just makes the wrong decisions, and he can't do it.
No.
He can't cut it. They've given him enough time, which I do think they're at the point. They're in year 3, correct?
Yes.
So they can pretty much cut him for next to
year
nothing.
Year 4, you ride that year, and then don't pick
so
the
they can
option.
sit his butt on the bench and maybe.
And if you're drafting a quarterback, you got that low salary, so I've seen enough now where it's like there aren't any more excuses, and we'll go to a couple other guys.
Well, and if he can't perform against the Bucks, I mean, this Bucks team is not great, and their defense is old.
It's not only that; it's that you see it from the coaching staff. The whole game, they didn't trust him to throw until the very end when they had to, and then he threw that terrible pick 6. And they don't think he can get the job done. They're protecting it to try to stay in games, and that's where I go. At what point do you just put your sights set on? Let's go get one of these quarterbacks in the NFL draft and see where we land. Next game up, Chiefs-Jags. Something interesting I noticed in this game and the Lions game. I think the tables have turned where the Chiefs' defense is actually the thing that's going to carry them this year. This Chiefs defense actually looks legit good and legit forceful, and it's just sort of, let's find our pockets where Patrick Mahomes can win us the game here and let our defense ride. I think this thing is flipped where the Chiefs defense is actually good, and we put it on Mahomes to make key plays.
I still get worried that he doesn't have, outside of Kelsey, the go-to playmaker at receiver. He's kind of just got a bunch of B-tier guys put together for that whole wide receiver room. And I think that's going to hurt, especially when you're talking Super Bowl run. And their lack of ability to run the ball very well. But defense better. Yeah. If Kelsey stays healthy, they're still going to score. Maybe that's enough. Yeah.
The thing I'll say about that is I think they have sort of this whole season to play with as well to sort of figure it out.
Well, and he's going to get more of a rapport.
They win games like this.
Well, and he's going to get a rapport with these guys. They're going to get more synced up because it's basically all new guys again for like the third year in a row ever since Tyreek left. Maybe he gets in rhythm with these guys and they figure some stuff out. Kelsey being back was a big help.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say, a couple interesting decisions with the Jags. They were up like 6-0 right there in the right at the end of the second half, they for some reason went for it on fourth down, gave the Chiefs the ball at basically midfield. Didn't quite understand that decision because, of course, Patrick Mahomes went down and got their 7 points right before the half. A game that the Jags pretty much dominated that whole first half.
Yeah.
And you go into halftime now down, and then
They stay competitive, though.
They really should have won this game. If you watch, they were living in the Chiefs' red zone the whole time. Chiefs' red zone defense stumped them. They couldn't do anything.
Ridley's been a great addition to this team.
That's where I want to. Where do you think the Jags are here? Do you look at this as sort of a positive? They played with the Chiefs, or do you look at this as Jags if they want to take that next step up into contender status? This is a game they needed to put away because. I mean, the Chiefs scored 17 points.
It's early in the year. I think the Jags are obviously still a pretty good team.
Yeah.
I think they're going to run away with the division. But I don't know if they're wanting to step up to, AFC title contenders. The Chiefs are the team you got to beat.
Yeah.
We saw it, when my Titans a couple years ago, they had their window AFC titles. It was them and Chiefs. So in the regular season, the Titans found a way to beat them in the regular season. Maybe the Jags can get there, but I thought it was a much closer game than the score indicated, and they didn't look bad. Just some weird decisions and some plays that kind of flipped the script. So just keep grinding away, and Lawrence is still developing. He's a year or two out from being one of the best quarterbacks in the league, I think. If they can keep these weapons around them and maybe add a few more pieces, they're definitely still on their way up.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Denver Commanders. We won't talk a lot of sort of Commanders here because we're going to break down their game with Buffalo a little bit here. But I think the heavy focus here has to be on Denver. 0-2 now. Basically, both games have gone the same way versus the Raiders and the Commanders. They got up 21-3, and then in the second half, legitimately, they couldn't do anything at all. It's just probably a couple questions here. I don't know if Sean Payton has it in him, but this is a team that needs to look to maybe punt this season and go after one of those big-time quarterbacks. And two, Russell Wilson is not a good NFL quarterback anymore.
No, I don't know if it's physically, mentally, the game.
Both.
Just it's passed him by. When he first came into the NFL, there was a lot of doubters that didn't think he could do it because of his size, and he proved a lot of them wrong and won a Super Bowl. But on stacked teams, I might add. But this Denver team is still a pretty good built football team, and we thought they were just a quarterback and a coach away, and they've got their quarterback last year. That didn't do anything. They got their coach this year. My question is do you kind of hold Peyton exempt for what this team is since it's year one and really just put this on Russell's shoulders?
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm curious about is what way would you go here? I mean, you could leave Russell in there, and I don't think they'd win another football game. Or they brought in Stidham. I think
Peyton could find a way to win with Stidham.
I think Peyton and his sort of ego probably wants to pull this trigger and be like, see, I'm the genius here. I can win with
It's too bad they paid Russell $200 million.
Well, I don't think it's that far off from them yanking Russell. But if you're looking at a long view here, the better decision might be let Russell go. This season sucks anyway. And then I think you'll have a difficult time getting the Arizona Cardinals tank job that they pulled. We didn't quite go over that game, but to get Caleb Williams. But, I mean, could you imagine if you could get Caleb Williams to Denver under Sean Payton's tutelage? Then you're talking an actual probably contender here in the NFL.
I think the other problem is there's probably about 5 or 6 teams that are going to be strongly considering the Caleb Williams lottery here.
The Arizona Cardinals tank job this weekend was
I'm also
something of a magical way to go.
I'm also curious to see what power Caleb Williams is going to try to wield going into this draft. Will we see an Eli situation where a team like the Cardinals draft him, and he's like, I'm not going to play for the Cardinals.
Yeah, I wouldn't, Denver would be the ones I have my eye on. But does it go that way, or do you think he rips Wilson out? Honestly, I think if they put Stidham in there, they could easily get to 8-9 wins. They could get to the playoffs, but I think it'd be more functional than it is.
We saw what Peyton could manufacture when he had, like Taysom Hill running quarterback. He just needs somebody to execute what he wants to do. And I don't know if Wilson's having a hard time doing that because it's not what he's done in the past, but it's just not working.
He can't keep blaming. He blamed Seattle for the offensive woes. Then he blamed the terrible coach last year.
Geno came in and did better immediately.
That's what he blamed the terrible coach last year for Denver's problems. They shipped him out and probably brought one of the 10 best coaches in NFL history in, and he still has the same problem. So, at some point, that's the problem.
Yeah.
He's the problem. I don't know where Denver goes. It just, I'm wondering how close the bench is coming here, and we get a Denver hook. They get massacred by Miami, and then we get the Stidham era.
Oh, I'm definitely eyeballing Miami. Even the 7.
Yeah.
That 7 doesn't scare me off, especially being at Miami.
Yeah. All right, let's flip things over to sort of previewing the upcoming week, talking about what these teams did last week a little bit, and we're going to start the Thursday night game. Niners, sort of a Niners-ish win.
Yeah.
The Rams. That ship continues to grow.
That was a great backdoor cover by McVay.
Yeah, we'll get to the McVay. Screw you.
I had the push. Thank God I had the push.
Any Niners.
I did see some people with 7.5s, though, that were probably very unhappy.
But I think the Giants is what needs to be talked about. At one point, they were losing the football season 61-0. I texted our group, the Giants aren't very good. And then I texted, no, I'm sure the Giants are not very good.
Was it the Giants that come back? Do you give them any credit, or do you put it all on Arizona?
I'll say this. Daboll has been good at making those halftime adjustments, but I put a lot of this on Arizona. I don't know if the bat phone started blinking bright red.
Hey, stop covering guys downfield.
We need to shore this up and make sure we don't get some wins here. But what do you make of this Giants team? I was sort of looking at them and being like, I think this could sort of be an NFC East kind of dark horse here. And I watched them 2 games in a row. I don't think they're all that good defensively and offensively, even with their additions. It doesn't look good. I think this is a bad
well, you got the Saquon injury now. There was I actually saw a thing he might play Thursday.
Yeah,
which
if they
shocked
throw
me.
him out on the short week versus the Niners, that's what we call a scheduled loss. Take that, punt it, come back the next week.
I don't know if I can buy in on the Giants. It seems like they've built a team, or it's an oddly built team. I don't think it fits the philosophy of the coach very well. They obviously like Daniel Jones. They gave him money, but I just don't know what they can do with it.
Yeah, it looks like 6-7 win football team to me.
Yeah. Now they do have some young guys
Yeah.
that they've picked up last couple years in the draft. They've started the draft for their needs, which is better than the Giants in past years. But those guys are not producing this year.
Yeah. I'm just anything on the Niners other than they're a good football team.
Yeah, they're a good football team. I think they cover the spread.
Yeah, I do too. Let's go to Titans-Browns. Any chance this is a one-score game that will be decided in the last minutes? Because I think you can pretty much guarantee. We both were kind of big on the Titans last week, just because you have the team that always wins close games versus the team that always loses close games. Titans-wise, were you... I know coming out of that Saints game, it was a little disheartening. I guess you can sort of look at the Titans game and be like, that's more what they are. I sort of think they're mediocre, but if they can do those type of things where
Yeah.
they just sort of hang around and then win in the closing minutes, they could probably get to their 9 wins.
Well, Tannehill didn't throw 3 interceptions in this game.
It helps that their receivers were streaking down the field wide open with no coverage. We'll get to the Chargers, trust me.
Yeah, they were able to throw the ball a little bit better. Tajay Spears has proven to be a pretty good backup to Derrick Henry. That's kind of a 1-2 punch. And Henry hasn't really done a whole lot this year. We'll see if he blows up, but good win. One thing I like, the Titans, they haven't really had a kicker for like the last 5 years, and they finally traded a 7th-round pick to get Nick Folk in here, and he's proven to be pretty good for them.
Let's go to the Browns. Another one just sort of devastating Nick Chubb injury, second time, and once again we go over this is why running backs hold out for money, because there's a very seldom chance that Nick Chubb even comes back normal after his knee exploded like that for the
same.
second
It's
time.
the same one that exploded in college.
Yeah.
So
There's going to be damage there, and it's already a year that he'll be gone. And it flips to Deshaun Watson, which I think is the main talking point here. We talked about Fields. There's no more excuses for Deshaun Watson. You could convince me last year.
he has weapons.
Coming back, in week 13, hadn't played in 2 years, but he played those closing games, 7 games last year.
Played all through training
He
camp.
had
this
training
year.
camp. He's had exhibition games, and he doesn't look like a good NFL quarterback. It's a little concerning that you're paying him $230 million guaranteed, because
Honestly, they had better quarterback production with Baker Mayfield.
I don't know where you go now if you're the Browns, because you don't rely on Nick Chubb, and now you have to rely on Deshaun Watson in the defense. And you saw what happened. The Steelers literally did nothing. Literally nothing on offense, and won that game because Deshaun Watson gave them 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, they did. They signed Kareem Hunt today. We'll see if that produces anything, but he wasn't on their team for a reason.
Yes, they cut him for a reason. He at least has been with them, but it's not Nick Chubb. You can't be like, okay, our offense is going to flow through Kareem Hunt here. It's a piece, but it's not a piece that says Deshaun Watson has to carry us now.
Well, I mean, it's going to put the focus on him even more than it's already been these first 2 games. But I mean, he hasn't been able to produce throwing the ball, and he's really going to have to now. And I don't know if he can.
Yeah,
Their defense looks okay though.
Yeah, but you
got to score points.
Yeah, they have to score points, and they didn't really score points in that Bengals game either.
And he can't
And
keep
he was
producing.
off.
And I mean, he can't keep producing with his legs.
No.
If he does that, he's going to get killed.
No, and I don't think they have an out here.
No,
This is it.
I don't think you could
and
find.
they have no first round picks because they traded those as well for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and you think anybody's going to relieve you of that contract in a
No.
trade? No way.
Because the one thing I do know is all the owners were pissed off because that screwed up the quarterback.
Oh, no, now they've had to pay all their quarterbacks more money because of that Deshaun Watson deal.
Correct. So now it got a little bit reset last year,
Yeah.
but still everybody can just point to that. You gave that terrible guy $230 million guaranteed. Why don't you give somebody who actually produces? Which I think was Lamar Jackson's whole point last year. It's like, why is that guy making more than me? He does nothing.
Yeah.
Do you still think the Browns? I think when we did our preseason, we thought the Browns capable of 10 to 12 wins if things went right.
No.
No chance.
I'll answer you now. No.
Do you think they're capable of still getting into the playoffs here? Because we talked about it on last week's show where I was like, this was a very Browns maneuver.
I'm going to say no.
Go into Cincinnati, win, go up to Pittsburgh, lose.
Who do you have more faith in to turn it around and get to the playoffs? The Browns or the Bengals?
Oh, Bengals.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And we both said that we think the Ravens are in.
Yeah. This is looking exactly what
I don't think the Browns get in.
This is probably the same thing as last year where they're 7-8 wins, 500. They have some they probably knock off, like a Miami or something, but then they go and lose to a Jets or a New England.
But I mean, we talk about, you look at the AFC East, you pretty much think that the Bills and Dolphins are both coming out of there. Ravens, Bengals probably.
Yes. And I
And
throw the
then-
Chiefs in there as well. So
Yeah.
we're at 5.
Yeah, I mean, you got Titans, Jags.
Yes.
Jags probably in, Titans maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think the Browns are going to have what it takes to get in.
I assume it's
And honestly, I'd take the Steelers over the Browns.
And I assume at some point as well the Chargers do their thing where they go on their little 4-game winning streak. And,
Maybe if they fire their coach.
well, we're getting to that. Don't worry. All right, let's go to Saints-Packers. Saints 2-0. Defense looks really, really strong, but I think you can flip it here. Their competition has not been elite. The Titans win looks a little better, but I don't think you or I would be like shutting down the Titans offense is some, epic proportions thing. Same thing for the Carolina, but it's been a long stretch where the Saints defense has been pretty good. Offense looked again shaky.
I mean, they had one deep pass play. Other than that, it was just kind of ground and pound, but they couldn't finish drives. Jamison Williams went out, so they're down to a guy they signed off the practice squad. They got one more week till they get Kamara back. I think that'll make a huge difference on
especially
their offense.
when Jamal Williams went out in this game hurt. So I'm having trouble reading the Saints, but I think they probably are the favorite here in the AFC South. I know you still like the Falcons, but I think the quarterback's going to, whereas Derek Carr is sort of okay. I'm in the Desmond Ritter is not okay. It's just
I just like the pieces that Atlanta has better, especially.
I will say Ritter in that fourth quarter played really good for the Falcons to pull that win out. Now before that, it was the same sort of Justin Fields type thing where they literally were looking for ways not to throw the ball with the quarterback. Now they have just a ridiculous run game with Bijan and Tyler Algier, and they haven't even gotten Patterson back. So maybe they can sort of snake their way through without a quarterback.
Let's see some wing T offense in the NFL or something with when Cordero gets back. That'd be awesome.
I think we might be getting close. Like I said, Ritter played better in that fourth quarter, completed some passes, but I mean, the weapons on the outside are not bad for the Falcons, but they just get no use. Drake London's worthless. Kyle Pitts, worthless. Once again, it's just basically Bijan, Tyler Algier, see what you can do, and go. So I still lean Saints a little bit because they do have that defense, and Carr isn't like lights out, but he functionally knows how to move an NFL team, and like you saw, the Saints aren't scared to throw with him. They just, it's not all that pleasing on the eye to watch the Saints offense. And I think once I get Kamara back, the offense, Kamara's not Kamara of 4 or 5 years ago, but it's still a piece you can check down to and stuff like that. So, Packers-wise,
no weapons.
It's until we get Watson, Dobbs out there, Aaron Jones back. I will say Jordan Love's looked pretty good. Defense once again looks good and bad. They couldn't shut down the Falcons' run game, but Falcons' run game good. Don't quite know what to make the Falcons. I'm interested to see. This should be a game the Packers should win at home. Saints coming off a short week, back-to-back road games.
I think the Packers will find a way to win this one simply because the Saints struggles on offense. I think the Packers are going to get in that 3 touchdown range, which might be enough.
Yeah. All right, we did a long breakdown on the Broncos. Let's talk a little Dolphins here because the Broncos are playing the Dolphins. Is this the best team in the AFC right now?
Right now, yes.
Are they going to be the best team in the AFC at the end?
I don't think so.
All right.
I think the Bills have a lot of things to work out. And, you've already talked about how you saw some improvements on the Chiefs week 1 to week 2. By the end of the year, I don't know. They've got so many weapons on offense. It's filthy how loaded they are on offense.
It's ridiculous what they can do on offense. And,
and I love to watch them.
The Pats basically were like, we'll just give it to you. Dolphins took it and won that game. Didn't get over-aggressive, didn't force the ball into Tyreek. They just took their little outside runs and short drops. And then if you play the Chargers, who just let receivers streak down the field without coverage. They can hit you for, Tyreek 200 yards. This offense is just ridiculous the way it's flowing right now. And the defense seems every quarter the defense gets better and better. Now, if that can come full bore to where they can just grab that pass rush to the point where they can harass quarterbacks, get turnovers and stops on defense, I don't think anybody's shutting this offense down.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the Bills can become. They've kind of started off slow.
Yeah.
And, until he beat the Chiefs are the top dogs.
The other thing is we'll need to see Miami on the road in the cold weather months. We're still in warm weather season, so it'll be interesting to see how this offense flows in,
And the key to all of this is
November and to his
health. I mean, it's come up every year he's played football.
Yeah.
Can they make it a whole season?
If he can make it a whole season, because I will say this too, the throws he was making in that Patriot game, tight windows, on point, are he's playing ridiculously good football right now. So we'll see what the Dolphins can do this week. I expect a big Tyreek Waddle back to the streaking down the field wide open. This one, I want to see the people who gamble on this game. We got Chargers, we got Vikings. Two teams who are of the similar value system of
over 800 passing yards in this game,
but probably 14 points apiece. I don't know. Let's go Chargers first. Honestly, I thought the loss to the Titans was just, from what we saw from the Titans passing game in week one, I'm stunned you let those receivers get behind you. You can convince me the Dolphins receivers get behind you and streak openly down the field and Tua hits them. That's okay. But the Titans receivers and quarterback combination, which basically showed nothing through two games there until the second half with the Titans, we're getting to a point Chargers-wise where we got to look at the coach. This is unacceptable with the talent that's on
it's a
Chargers
stacked roster on both sides of the ball.
Both sides. That's the thing. It's the defensive players are not bad players. They're loaded there. They're loaded on offense. We get these same Chargers teams for 3 years now.
Yeah, I just, and you've got to point the finger at the coach.
Yes.
It's weird mistakes. It's just lack of being prepared for games. I can't put it together. I mean, they've got the personnel.
That's the thing. There is no reason they should have lost that game this weekend. And both you and I were like,
but we both kind of saw it.
We were like, Titans are going to win this game. Chargers are going to do some dumb stuff. Titans aren't going to do any dumb stuff, and they'll win the game, probably on a field goal to close it out. But it's. I don't think the Chargers are going to fire their coach. They haven't been ones to fire coaches in the season, so I think this is what we're going to get. We'll probably get some mini run there by the Chargers to bring them up and around 500 because they do have talent, and that tends to be what they do.
Well, they've got a good make-right team this week.
Yeah, but I don't take Chargers seriously at all in the playoffs. So that's what it is, Vikings-wise. Anything on them other than I think this might be a bad football team?
Yeah, but I did see that Cousins may throw. He's on pace for like the most yardage ever thrown in a football season. He might break 6,000 yards passing. That
would be fitting. A single season yardage leader
wins 6 games,
4 games. That would sort of just fit the complete.
It would fit Kirk Cousins very well.
Narrative. A lot of numbers, not much substance, but nonetheless, no one should gamble on this game. Or just, once again, the team that's up, you should probably just take the other side. Just keep doing it. Whichever team goes up, just keep playing the opposite side because you'll be on the right end of somebody doing something stupid and losing this game. let's go Rams-Bengals that close it out. We talked a little bit Bengals-wise. Rams-wise, this, again, looks like a good football.
Yeah.
I thought they played really well in that Niners game. Stafford looks really good. I know he had a couple picks there, but those are just, he was trying to make plays as the Niners started to pull away. Puka apparently is the greatest receiver in the history of football. But
do you think that's a product of the system a little bit?
Well, I do want, he is in the Cooper Cup spot, so I mean, Sean McVay knows how to get.
It'll be fun to watch them both on the field if Cooper gets back.
Well, that's what I'm curious about. They claimed he'll be ready to go probably after he gets off, his little IR stint in 4 weeks. I'm a little dubious about that because, I don't think you go to see hamstring specialists, 5 states away if everything is cool down there. But, yeah, if they could get Kupp and Puka out there, and Stafford stay healthy.
And Tutu's been good, too.
And Tutu's been good.
Puka and Tutu. And
Van Jefferson's sort of gone the way of absentee. But, and the running back Williams, I think, looks really, really good. Great call by McVay.
They just kick Akers to the curb.
Put in the better player. We were down on this team, but I'm curious.
I mean, they hung with the 49ers.
Do you think if they stay healthy, health is the key here. Do you think they can sneak into this sort of playoff run here? Because I don't think the NFC's all that deep from the top.
You said it. Yeah, I think they can because I think an 8-win team could get a wild card in the NFC.
And I think their defense has played pretty well too. I think we thought their defense would fall back, but they managed to hang around. They did a pretty good job on the Niners up until the last sort of fourth quarter there.
And Stafford does not look like he's ready to mail it in.
No.
He came out ready to compete.
His body looks good. He looks able to move, and he's throwing darts.
I've been surprised.
Yeah, it's looked good for the Rams. We already went on the Bengals here, so that probably wraps up our NFL coverage. Got a couple soccer games to talk about. Probably the one to talk about, Munich, Leverkusen on Friday. I thought it was a really good football game. I think we knew it would be.
Both teams had their ups and downs in
both
this one.
Both teams came out to win and opened this game up. Probably too much for the coaches being.
I thought Munich had a shot to put it away there in the first half. Leverkusen held on and didn't give up that goal to close the half and kept it close. And I thought it was great for them to come away with points on the road in Munich.
I thought that was really, really important. I think they showed, we can play with you. We aren't Dortmund. That's probably a whole show unto itself, what Dortmund has sort of turned into.
And to be honest, Leverkusen had some opportunities in the second half.
I was going to say, Boniface had 2 or 3 ones that he probably should have finished. Probably got a little too sort of pumped up there.
That's a lot of pressure going up against the big dogs.
But he was bossing a handful of those guys on the defensive side of the ball, just moving them like they were nothing. So I will say that was a hell of a football
It's probably
game.
the best match we've had this season in any of the leagues.
I think so. Talent-wise, openness. Now, like I said, I don't think the coaches were in love with the field being that open and both teams streaking down there for opportunities. But hell of a football game and a good way for Leverkusen to sort of come away with a point there. They'll have Munich on their home field, see if they can take 3 there and maintain. I think this still is a race.
Well, and they don't have all these other leagues that Munich has to keep up with. That's going to be a little bit more onto their fatigue and run through the season. Where Leverkusen they've got Europa, but they can really focus in on the Bundesliga as well.
Definitely so. All right, we'll move to the game. I told you. We should have taken.
We saw it coming.
This should have been a second mortgage game and made us some money. We knew this line was off, and we did put money. We both won money on this game, but it's one of those where I think we saw the advantage. We didn't take full advantage of it. Brighton went into Manchester United and lit them up.
Yeah.
They're just the better football team right now.
United has just proven time and again that they are not ready to be top 4 this year.
Yeah. I'm curious, what do you think is it just the names? Because if this had been like, if we had watched Brighton and their name was Arsenal,
Yeah.
and we had gotten this line,
Oh yeah.
we would have emptied. We would have emptied the bank.
Had Brighton not dropped that one to West Ham, I probably would have been way more over this. I still like Brighton because there was just a couple bad bounces that went their way in that West Ham game. But yeah, I think they're potentially one of the best teams outside of Man City.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I was thinking about gambling wise, where I'm like, that was an opportunity. It was an opportunity. We made money. You can't be, but it's one of those where
When both the score was 4-1.
Yeah, I had that, and I was like, that.
And they're going to get one goal.
That was our advantage. You didn't take full advantage, and we'll probably, lose 2 or 3 games in the next week. That cancel that out when that could have been our bankroll for the freaking year. And I'm like, if that name isn't Brighton at Man United and it's Arsenal and you just visually watch them play, no jersey, it's just one of those weird gambling things. Yeah. You hear Brighton at Man United and you're like, you can't do that. And then you just watch the teams. I mean, as soon as it kicked off, I was like, Brighton's a better football team. They're winning this game. I was more nervous that I wasn't going to get my 4-1, and Man U wasn't going to get their cheap goal at the end, but they got their cheap goal at the end. Next one that sort of
saved a couple of our plays.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The Brighton play was almost wiped out instantly by this one. Tottenham could not get a goal. They dominated the game. Couldn't finish a point.
At home.
Yeah, at home. Sheffield got the cheesy goal that, just sits there and you're like, yep.
And then they just sat back and Tottenham pulled it out of their ass.
Somehow, somehow the game went 15 extra minutes in injury time.
Well, it was funny. They went past the injury time before one of those goals. So a little curious there.
But nonetheless, Tottenham got 2 goals, I think, in the 97th minute and
101st, I think. 101st, 102nd. And then they got another one.
Yeah. So, what do you make of Tottenham here? You look at it and you're like, why do you need 98th minute goals for Sheffield at home? But there's something to fighting through. Richarlison got on there, created both those goals.
It was good to see him back in action and playing well.
And Brendan Johnson
probably for the first time since he's played well for the Spurs since he's shown up.
Yeah. 10-15 minute stretch was probably his best stretch as a Spurs player.
So yeah, it's good to not lose those games. That's one that would have sat with them
Certainly for us.
That would have sat with them the rest of their season. Probably sat with us the rest of our season. There's got to be some concern though, because if you want to be a top dog, this is one that never has to be in doubt, and it was very much in doubt. And I don't know. I like my Spurs, and they've been much better this year. The Perisic injury sucks because he's been actually pretty useful this year. I'm interested to see how they come out. They got a big match at home against Arsenal this week that I'm looking forward to. Arsenal's been winning games, but they haven't looked great doing it. This is a chance for Tottenham to really make their statement, but they're going to have to come out better than they did against the Blades.
Yeah, and we'll transition to Arsenal.
Yeah.
1-0 versus Everton. They dominated the game. Couldn't really
I tell you what,
score. What I was going to ask is, they never win in Everton. Now, granted,
Everton is probably getting relegated this year.
Awful. That's what I'm going to say. What do you judge here? I mean, Arsenal struggles at Everton, but Everton has been a top 8 side for, their 100 years of existence in the Premier League.
But they're terrible this year.
But the last 3 years, they've been atrocious, and this year, it might go beyond atrocious. So what do you make of this? It just sort of, it's looked the same as Arsenal of year, where the win has been there.
They're just struggling to get goals across.
They can't find goals.
Yeah, I mean, they're creating opportunities, and they're just swinging and missing, and can't finish. And I'm really interested to see. Like I said, they're playing the Spurs this week, and the Spurs.
Well, that's too. Everton's incapable of taking advantage of scoring goals, but Arsenal's given up the cheap ones all year as well.
I tell you what, Tottenham's defense is lacking a little bit.
Yeah.
If Arsenal's going to get some goals, it needs to come against Tottenham, and which I think it's going to be a good matchup though.
Do we make anything of the goalkeeper change for Arsenal? I mean, it got news, but I think once they brought in, they paid for
that's not why they're struggling.
Yeah, that's why I was like, they paid for a $30 million goalkeeper. What did you think was going to happen? They sort of told you what they thought, but, everything in the EPL gets blown out of proportion. But I'm like, if they paid $30 million for a goalkeeper, they clearly were unhappy with the one that was sitting in there.
Yeah.
So I don't make much of it. A little weird comments afterward where Arteta was talking about pulling goalkeepers and switching them mid-game. I don't know if that actually is going to happen. Then we probably do have some talking points if he starts rotating goalkeepers mid-game.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. I think I'm curious about this Arsenal-Tottenham game because
I definitely think we could see some goals.
Yeah, I think that's the chance, but we haven't seen Arsenal score.
Might be a
all
pyramid
year.
opportunity.
It might be a pyramid opportunity. I definitely think that's coming from you. I'll have to see what the odds are. I haven't looked. Like I said, the pyramid opportunity in like Leverkusen, Munich was not there because I think it started out at like 2-1 at 4 goals. So, let's go to Spain. I talked about Atletico Madrid on last week's show, and they needed to go in there to sort of remain in touch and win games on the road.
Took care of business.
No, they were awful. They lost 3-0.
Oh, wait, who we... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong matchup.
No, they lost. They were terrible.
I was thinking the other Madrid.
Oh, yeah. No, they went in and played sort of crappy.
And
they
won.
did their Madrid thing.
I'm sorry. Atletico Madrid.
Atletico Madrid. Yeah, I probably just said Madrid, didn't I? Yeah. Well, Atletico Madrid went to Valencia and was atrocious. Do we just write this team off as an actual contender to Barcelona and Real Madrid? Barcelona's started to look a little bit smoother, and Real Madrid never looks smooth but always wins. And Atletico Madrid goes into Valencia and lays a complete egg and loses 3-0. I thought at the beginning of the year this Atletico Madrid could challenge for La Liga, but this is twice now in the first 4 games of the season where they've gone on
I think we talked about it in
and
the
just
futures
been
that
garbage.
we were looking at the odds for top finish, not counting Madrid and Barcelona, and we were like, hey, Atletico's pretty good, and it's not looking great.
No. They win at home, but they still do this stupid road thing, and I'm borderline writing them off for, even being in contention of La Liga, especially with the way Barcelona sort of looked of late, and then, Real Madrid just does their Real Madrid thing and wins ugly every week. I think other than the EPL, the Serie A had the biggest games of the weekend. I told you about Juventus and Laszlo. I didn't want you to let me take Juventus, and then, of course, I didn't, and then Juventus played like as they always do, and have been good, and I should have gone after it because Laszlo had also the Champions League game in the week. They didn't throw a total full lineup coming off international break, but Juventus good. Other than that, I think the one game you bet them on where they went on the road and sort of stubbed their toe, but Juventus continues to play pretty good football here. Do you think, do you put them in the contender? We'll get to Milan and Napoli here, but do you sort of throw Juventus back into that contender type of territory
I think
in
so.
Syria?
I mean, we saw that they were, coming on at the end of last season as well, and I think they picked up right where they left off.
I'm looking at them here. Inter versus AC Milan. It was all Inter Milan.
I was a little disappointed with AC's production, but we saw there was some guys out.
Yeah. The thing I talked about too, Inter's just sort of owned Milan over the last couple of years. I don't know why it is.
I hit all my goal bets. So.
Yeah. Well, that happens when Inter scores 5, but there's not a ton to break down because it sort of played out. I don't think 5-1, but Inter's just sort of owned Milan.
Well, I mean, they come out, they got 2-0 lead, and then it was 2-1, and then 3, and then they immediately got that answer, and 3-1, and just buried them.
It's just sort of been how it's been. Milan had a handful of guys coming back off international break.
Yeah.
They threw Pulisic and stuff out there who I think there was fatigue.
Well, there was quite a bit of traveling for him
Yes.
as well.
And it wasn't just him. They have a handful of,
Yeah.
other guys. Plus they had Champions League. I know Inter did too, but it's just Inter's owned it. I wasn't totally shocked. I was a little shocked by the 5 goals scored by Inter, but nonetheless, I think the main thing I want to get into, now you could use international break here too, but Napoli went to Genoa 2-2. This is, they lost that game at home to Laszlo, who's been not good so far.
Napoli hasn't looked good since the close of Champions League last year.
And then Napoli comes back off international break, 2-2 versus Genoa. We talked about maybe Napoli falling back to the pack. New coach. I know a lot of the players there. They started out pretty good the first game or two. But how much do you put on a lot of their guys coming back from international break, not having legs? Champions League midweek, road game here to maybe Napoli. This is sort of the fallback.
Yeah, I think this is
are.
a little bit of a fallback. We were both big on them in Champions League last year, and they made it to quarters, semis, and then just got beat down and haven't recovered from that.
No,
as for what I can tell, and I just think there's some other teams that look much better.
You still favor them to be in the top 4? I haven't seen enough depth out of Serie A. I thought there'd be more depth, but with Fiorentina selling a handful of their guys, Atalanta hasn't looked all that smooth. We mentioned Laszlo hasn't looked great.
Yeah, they might.
So I think they still sort of. I think we're getting a sort of traditional Serie A top 4 of Juventus, the Milans, and maybe Napoli in there. I'm not totally worried, but. This one gave me more pause. They should be able to go to Genoa and win off international break or not. Coming off the Laszlo, who's, went to Juventus, looked like garbage. Basically have looked like garbage every game, but the one versus Napoli.
Speaking of garbage, it's not on our list today, but I wanted to throw one more out there.
All right, throw it out there.
What are your thoughts on PSG?
I was in between.
Are you still looking at other teams to win French league?
I am, because Monaco had another good week. I will say this. I kicked myself with Brighton. I stared at that Nice win, both to score very, very hard.
I got Mbappe 2+ at 3-1, which I thought was pretty solid.
I got
although one was a really cheap goal.
Yeah, I got the Mbappe 2+. Granted, it seemed like they just gave him a free one there at the end to pump up the stats. But nonetheless,
but PSG's struggling.
Yeah. I can't. That's what I can't say. I'm surprised because I stared very hard at the Nice, and I was like, "PSG's going to just crap the bed here." I know it, but then I'm like, Nice a good team, but hadn't been playing well. Yeah. I should have pulled the trigger, just throw a little bit on it. But yeah, there's a lot of talent on PSG. That's what gives me pause.
Yeah,
but. It might be one of those things where they turn it off way too many times, and Monaco just doesn't drop enough games. I think Monaco's about the only one that could challenge. And, I know last week I said PSG too much talent, but if they turn it off enough and the focus switches to Champions League too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if let's win or try to win Champions League here, because the other thing, I think a lot of these teams will break down Champions League games next week, but, there are flaws in Munich. There are flaws in Real Madrid. I mean, Barcelona hasn't been relevant in Europe in 4 years. These teams at the top, other than Man City, I think you'd say are all vulnerable. So maybe PSG looks to that and says, maybe if we can just get to the semis, we can see if we can make a name for ourselves. Now that's looking, 6 months ahead. They could draw the bad end of the stick in the knockout rounds. They sort of drew the bad end of the stick in the group stage. But yeah, interesting. Still like Monaco. I will say Monaco 3-0 win. Looked good again. But yeah, I'm mostly just mad I didn't take my niece. It was a week of bets I should have made and decided against for no reason. I think the Friday thing threw me off too a little bit. I wasn't prepared to start wagering large numbers on Friday. Nonetheless, Wager Zone in the books for this week. We'll get all our picks out. Dynamite David will have his NFL short for Thursday night out on Thursday. I think he's going to try to combine all his picks into one total show. So soccer, NFL, college football this week. Be on the lookout for that on Winning Daily. I will get my college football and soccer picks out. The goal. NFL. We will try to get done before 11:30 on Sunday. We haven't been great on that. Well, yes, you been perfectly fine. I have not. I've basically been scrambling and having to make 750 bets on 4 different sports books until right before kickoff. So the goal, NFL for me, done by Saturday, maybe out Sunday, but done and recorded. I'll get definitely college football and soccer. We've been able to get that out. But goal, NFL for me. I think we're going to get one combined show for you, but you've gotten them out. Be sure to be on the lookout for Winning Daily and all our other shows. Like, subscribe, find us wherever you can listen to podcasts. That's our show, and we're out.
This is Stapleton Airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.